There's something haunting about the quiet hours of the night, when the world feels still, and the air hums with secrets waiting to be uncovered. Picture this, a lone witch, her breath shallow, her fingers brushing against the spines of forbidden books, in the darkest corner of the Hogwarts library. Elara Blackthorn isn't supposed to be here. The restricted section is off limits, but the pull of Azkaban's hidden history is too strong to resist, and tonight, she's willing to risk everything to uncover the truth. Wherever you're listening from right now, whether it's late evening or the dead of night, let us know in the comments below. There's something special about sharing this moment with you, as if we're all huddled together, about to step into the shadows of one of the wizarding world's most chilling mysteries. The book she pulls from the shelf isn't just old, it's alive. Its black leather cover pulses faintly under her touch, as though it's been waiting for someone brave enough or foolish enough to open it. The first page whispers to her, words forming in ink that seems to bleed from the parchment itself. It speaks of Askeban, not as a prison, but as something far older, far darker. A place built on foundations of suffering, its very stones steeped in sorrow. What if everything we've been told about Askeban is just the surface? What if the real story has been buried, erased, or worse, forgotten on purpose? This isn't just a tale of locked doors and Dementors. It's a story of power, of fear, and of the lengths people will go to hide the things that shame them. As Alara turns those cursed pages, she's not just reading history, she's awakening it. And by the end of this journey, you'll see Askeban in a light so stark, so unsettling, it might just change the way you think about the wizarding world forever. So lean in closer. Let's follow her into the dark, one whispered secret at a time. The ink on the pages seems to writhe under Alara's fingertips, forming words that vanish as soon as she reads them, as if the book itself is afraid of being discovered. The ancient text speaks of Akrisdes, a name that sends a shiver down her spine. He wasn't just a dark wizard, he was an architect of anguish, a man who twisted magic into something unspeakable. Long before the Ministry claimed Askeban as a prison, it was his stronghold, a place where he conducted experiments so horrific, even the bravest historians dare only whisper about them. The fortress wasn't built to keep people out, it was designed to keep them in. And then there's the chamber. The book calls it the heart, a hollow space beneath the lowest dungeon where Akrisdes poured his darkest rituals. The walls there aren't stone, they're fused with the remnants of his victims, their final screams trapped in the mortar. No spell can unseal it. The entrance demands a price no sane witch or wizard would pay. But the most chilling detail, the book claims something still lingers there. Not Dementors, not ghosts, something older, hungrier, something that doesn't just feed on happiness, but on the very act of hoping. Alara's breath catches as a cold draft slithers past her, though the library's windows are sealed. The shadow in the corner of her vision grows darker, thicker, as if the air itself is resisting her curiosity. The book slams shut with a sound like a gasp, its cover now ice cold to the touch, but she can't stop now. The truth is too close, and the pull of the heart is like a drumbeat in her bones. Some secrets aren't meant to stay buried, and some doors, once opened, can't be closed again. Theo's hands tremble as he spreads the brittle parchment across the library table, the lamplight catching the faded ink of a report, marked classified, eyes only. The words tell a story the Ministry never wanted told. A midnight raid on Askeban's deepest chamber, led by a team of seasoned aurors, armed with every protective charm known to wizard kind. They never stood a chance. Theo's voice drops to a whisper as he reads the final line aloud. No bodies recovered, no traces of spellwork. Only the walls, they said the walls were breathing. Alara's stomach twists. This wasn't just a failed mission. It was a silencing. Theo leans closer, his usual mischievous grin replaced by something darker. You know what this means, don't you? He murmurs. The Ministry didn't just lose those aurors. They buried the truth because they couldn't face it. His fingers tap nervously against the table, a habit he's had since first year, when the weight of a secret became too much to carry alone. But Alara's eyes are already distant, locked on the sketch beside the report, a crude drawing of a door, its frame etched with runes that look less like symbols and more like screams frozen in stone. A draft slithers through the library, snuffing out one of the lamps. Theo jumps, but Alara doesn't flinch. Her mind is racing, piecing together the fragments of a puzzle no one else dares to touch. If the Ministry couldn't breach the chamber with force, perhaps the answer lies in something older, subtler, a bargain, a sacrifice, the kind of magic that leaves stains on the soul. Theo grabs her wrist. You're not actually considering. She doesn't let him finish. The resolve in her voice surprises even her. They vanished because they went in as intruders. But what if someone invited the darkness in first? The silence between them stretches, thick with the unspoken truth. This isn't just research anymore. It's a threshold, and Alera's already decided which side of it she belongs on. Somewhere in the shelves behind them, a book falls with a thud. Too loud, too sudden. Theo swears under his breath, but Alara barely hears him. Her gaze is fixed on the shadow pooling at their feet, blacker than it should be, shifting just slightly, as if something beneath the floorboards has turned to listen. The Black family name still carries weight in certain shadowed corners of the wizarding world, enough to open doors that should stay locked. Alara's request for ancestral records at Azkaban is met with stiff nods from Ministry officials, their eyes glazing over as she spins her story about tracing a lost branch of the family tree. No one questions why a 17-year-old would need to visit the most feared prison in Europe for genealogy research. That's the thing about old blood and older money people. See what they expect to see. Theo's cauldron bubbles with a concoction that smells like rotting lilies and cold iron, the steam curling into shapes that flinch away from the light. Dementor distraction draft, he mutters, stirring counter, clockwise with a silver knife. Lasts 20 minutes, maybe 30 if we're lucky, and by lucky, I mean not getting our souls sucked out through our eyeballs. His jokes are thinner than usual, the tension between them stretched tight as a bowstring. Alara rolls up her sleeves to help, and freezes. The symbols from the book aren't just etched into her skin anymore. They pulse like veins, glowing a sickly green that matches the potion's fumes. She yanks her sleeves down, but Theo's already seen. For a heartbeat, his face does something complicated: fear, then anger, then something worse, understanding. It's choosing you, he says quietly. The admission hangs in the air, heavy as the prison fog already creeping into Alara's dreams. Every night now, she wakes with salt on her lips and the sound of waves in her ears. though her dormitory is miles from the sea. And always, the same voice threading through the dark. Come home. Their last evening before the trip, Alara finds Theo in the owlery, feeding treats to a barn owl with unsteady hands. We don't have to do this, he offers, not meeting her eyes. The owl hoots softly, as if it too knows the weight of what they're risking. Alara flexes her fingers, feeling the symbols beneath her skin twist in response. That's the thing about secrets. Once they sink their teeth into you, there's no pulling free. The prison isn't just waiting, it's expecting her, and the worst part. Some deep, hidden part of her is eager to answer. The wind howls through the rusted bars of Azkaban's entrance, like a chorus of the damned, each gust carrying whispers that aren't quite words, just the ragged edges of voices worn thin by centuries of despair. Alera's breath fogs in the air, the Dementor distraction draft, coating her tongue with the taste of wet ash and copper, but the potion works. The cloaked figures glide past without turning their hollow faces toward her and Theo, their ragged breath the only sign they sense anything amiss. For now, Theo's knuckles whiten around his wand as they peel away from the ministry-approved tour route, ducking into a side passage so narrow their shoulders scrape against stone slick with something that isn't quite moisture. The map from the book glows faintly in Alara's palm, its ink rearranging itself with every step, as if the prison itself is guiding them, or testing them. The deeper they go, the more the walls seem to press inward, the stones groaning like old bones under the weight of too many secrets. A faint sobbing echoes from somewhere above, though the upper levels were abandoned decades ago. Theo freezes, his boot hovering over a crack in the floor where thin, vein-like tendrils of black mist seep upward. That's not a Dementor, he mutters, and the dread in his voice makes Alara's skin prickle. She knows what he's thinking. The book mentioned other things that dwell here, older things, things that don't just feed on joy, but on the very act of remembering. The air shifts, the scent of salt and iron grows overpowering, and suddenly the map in Alara's hand burns white hot. She barely stifles a cry as the ink surges, forming a single word in jagged letters, below. A gust of frigid wind extinguishes Theo's Lumos spell, plunging them into darkness so complete it feels alive. Somewhere in the blackness, stone grinds against stone, the sound of something opening. Or awakening. Theo's voice shakes as he relights his wand, the glow revealing what the prison has been hiding. A spiral staircase winding downward, its steps worn smooth by countless feet. But here's the thing that stops Alara's heart. The grooves in the stone aren't from descent. They are from something climbing up. The runes on the door shimmer like fresh wounds under Alara's fingertips, their edges weeping dark beads that aren't quite blood. The incantation spills from her lips in a language she's never learned yet somehow knows, a tongue that curls like smoke, thick with the weight of centuries. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then the door groans, its hinges screaming as it yawns open to reveal a chamber so vast, so impossibly deep, that Theo's Lumos spell can't pierce the gloom. The air here doesn't move. It pulses, heavy with the rhythm of something far below, like the slow, deliberate heartbeat of a sleeping beast. The walls aren't stone. They are faces, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, their features stretched and frozen in silent screams, their hollow eyes tracking Alara as she steps forward. Theo grabs her arm, his fingers trembling. They're not ghosts, he breathes. They're trapped. His voice cracks on the last word, because the truth is worse than either of them imagined. These aren't echoes of the dead. They're the living, or what's left of them, preserved in the walls like insects in amber, their magic siphoned away drop by drop to feed whatever slumbers in the dark. A laugh echoes through the chamber, low and jagged, though no mouth moves to make it. The voice slithers into Alara's mind, oily with satisfaction. "Clever girl," it murmurs. "You always were the curious one." Theo staggers back, clapping his hands over his ears, but the words aren't spoken aloud. They're being remembered, dredged up from some buried corner of Alara's mind, where they've been waiting all along. Theo's grip tightens. We have to go, now, but Alara's already shaking her head, her gaze locked on the shifting darkness at the chamber's heart. The voice isn't just speaking to her. It's unraveling her, peeling back layers of memory she didn't know were there. A flash of salt-stained robes, a lullaby hummed in a voice that isn't her mother's. The scent of burning sage and something darker, something rotting. Theo yanks her backward so hard she stumbles, but it's too late. The door groans shut behind them with a finality that rings like a death knell. The lumos flickers, then dies, plunging them into a blackness so complete it feels like drowning. Somewhere in the dark, something shifts. Not a sound, not a movement, just the awful, certain knowledge that the chamber breathes, and they are no longer alone inside it. The symbols on Alara's arms blaze like embers, searing so deep she can feel the heat in her bones. The chamber exhales, a gust of air thick with the scent of wet earth and old iron, and suddenly, she's not standing on cracked stone anymore. She's drowning in memories that aren't hers. Askeban rises before her, not as a prison, but as an altar. Echrisdes stands at its heart, his hands raised to a sky choked with smoke, his voice weaving spells that twist the air itself into knots. The stones weep black tears as he carves runes into their surface, each stroke a promise of suffering. The prisoners aren't just locked away, they are harvested, their magic siphoned drop by drop into the foundations, feeding something that stirs in the dark. Alara's throat burns with the echoes of their screams. Then the vision shifts, a prophecy etched in blood on parchment that crumbles at the edges. The child of shadows will come when the moon drowns in its own light. Born of the blood that built these walls, she will wake what sleeps beneath. The words coil around her like chains. She understands now why the book called to her, why the symbols slithered under her skin without pain. The Black family tree isn't just tangled with dark wizards, it's rooted in him. Theo's shout yanks her back as the ground splinters beneath them, fissures spider-webbing outward like veins. His grip on her wrist is the only thing keeping her from tumbling into the abyss yawning below. But the voice, Echrisdes' voice, laughs, its amusement curling through the chamber like poison. You feel it, don't you, the pull of your birthright? The words aren't spoken aloud. They slither up from the cracks, from the walls, from the very blood in Alara's veins. Theo's wand trembles as he fires a jinx at the nearest fissure, the spell fizzling into the dark without effect. We have to move, he yells, but Alara's legs won't obey. The prophecy plays behind her eyes on a loop, each word a hammer strike. Child of shadows, wake what sleeps. The chamber thrums in time with her pulse, the air vibrating with a hunger so vast it could swallow the world. Somewhere in the cracks below, something shifts. Not stone, not shadow, something alive, and it's not just watching, it's waiting. The floor heaves beneath them like the deck of a storm-tossed ship, stones splitting apart with a sound like snapping bones. Theo drags Elara backward as a chunk of ceiling crashes where she stood seconds before, dust and debris filling the air like a choking fog. The Dementors' hollow wails pierce the chaos Theo's potion has worn off, and the creatures swarm the corridor ahead, their tattered robes billowing like sails on a ghost ship. Elara's wand moves before she thinks, a burst of silver fire erupting from its tip, not a patroness, but something wilder, older, the flames twisting into shapes that make even the Dementors recoil. Theo doesn't ask questions. He sprints, yanking her along as the walls crumble around them, the prison shuddering as if in rage. The exit looms ahead, a sliver of storm-gray light through the ruin, but the corridor behind them is collapsing faster, stones groaning as they're swallowed by the abyss they woke. Cold fingers brush Alara's neck, not the Dementors, but the chamber's voice, whispering as the distance grows. You can't outrun what's inside you. The boat rocks violently as they plunge into it, Theo's hands fumbling with the mooring line as the first Dementor breaches the doorway, its breath like winter, stealing the last leaves from a tree. Alara raises her wand again, but this time, nothing comes. The magic that saved them moments ago has vanished, leaving only a hollow ache in her chest. The oars row themselves, carrying them into the churning sea, as Askeban's silhouette warps behind them, its towers bending like candles in the heat, the very stones seeming to breathe. Theo rounds on her the moment the shore is out of sight, his face ashen under the spray. What in Merlin's name was that? His voice cracks between fury and fear, his fingers digging into her shoulders. That wasn't just dark magic, Alara. That was, he stops, because the truth is written in the way her hands won't stop shaking, in the way the runes on her arms have darkened to the color of old bruises. She turns her face to the storm, letting the rain hide what she can't explain. The prison's whisper curls around her thoughts, insistent as the tide. You open the door. Now see what walks through, far behind them, deep in the heart of Azkaban. Something that hasn't stirred in centuries lifts its head and smiles. The marks crawl up Alara's arms like vines, seeking sunlight, each new tendril burning colder than the last. By dawn, they've reached her collarbone, a lattice of jagged symbols that thrum in time with her heartbeat. She doesn't need a mirror to know her eyes have changed. The way Theo flinches when she looks at him tells her everything. The shadows in the Gryffindor common room bend toward her now, pooling at her feet like loyal hounds, and the whispers Merlin, the whispers. Even with the windows charmed shut, she hears them, the creak of Azkaban's gates, the drip of water in its lowest cells, the wet, ragged breathing of something that knows her name. The book appears on her pillow one evening, its leather binding slick with condensation, as if dredged from the sea. The pages are different, thicker, heavier, filled with script that wriggles like worms under her gaze. Blood calls to blood, the first line declares, the ink glistening like fresh wounds. To claim what is yours, you must first become it. The ritual described isn't dark magic. It's something older, a series of steps that read less like spellwork and more like a conversation with the dark itself. Light a candle with no flame. Speak a name that isn't spoken. Offer a memory that hurts to remember. Theo finds her tracing the instructions at 3 in the morning, her fingers leaving smudges of blackened parchment where they touch. He doesn't yell, he doesn't even swear. His voice is barely audible over the storm, rattling the tower windows. "Burn it," he says, hand outstretched. Right now, before it sinks its teeth in any deeper. The shadows around Alara coil tighter, as if offended. She should listen to him. She wants to, but the book's words echo in her skull, twisting her hesitation into something sharper. What if this isn't corruption? What if it's coming home? That night, the dream is worse. She stands in the chamber again, but the faces in the walls aren't screaming anymore. They're watching. The voice wraps around her, warmer than before, almost fond. "Air," it murmurs, and the word settles in her ribs like a second heartbeat. When she wakes, her mouth tastes of salt and iron, and the book lies open beside her. New lines scrawled in her own handwriting, though she doesn't remember lifting a quill. The last sentence steals the air from her lungs. The moon drowns in 2 nights' time. Downstairs, the castle clocks chime 4. Somewhere beyond the lake, beyond the reach of even the strongest patroness, Askeban's towers sway like trees in the wind. Waiting, counting, hungry. Theo's hands shake as he shoves the book into his bag, his breath coming in short, panicked bursts. He tells himself he's doing the right thing, the only thing. But the moment he turns to leave, the air in the dormitory curdles, thick with the scent of ozone and something far darker. Alara stands in the doorway, her silhouette haloed by the flickering torchlight from the corridor, her eyes twin pools of ink. The shadows clinging to her don't just move, they breathe. "You took it." Her voice isn't hers. It's layered, echoing, as if something else is speaking through her. Theo's throat goes dry. He's seen Alara angry before. Furious even, but this is different. This isn't temper. This is something primal, something hungry. The bag at his side suddenly feels like it's filled with live coals, the book inside pulsing as though answering her call. He stumbles back, his heel catching on the edge of his trunk, but before he can right himself, Alara's hand snaps up. The spell isn't one he recognizes. It isn't even a proper spell, just raw magic, unfiltered and furious, lashing out like a whip of black flame. It doesn't strike him. It wraps around him, searing through his robes without burning the fabric, sinking into his skin like ice water. Pain blossoms in his chest, sharp and sudden, but it isn't the magic that wounds him. It's the look on Alara's face, the betrayal, the contempt, as she watches him crumple. McGonagall finds them like that. Theo on his knees, gasping, the book spilled open at his feet. Alara standing over him, her fingers still curled into claws, the runes on her arms writhing like serpents. The professor's gasp is barely audible, but the way her knuckles whiten around her wand speaks volumes. She doesn't ask questions. She doesn't need to. One glance at the book's pages now filled with shifting, liquid text that wasn't there before, and her face drains of color. "Miss Blackthorn." McGonagall's voice is steel wrapped in velvet, the kind of tone that stops even the boldest students mid-mischief. There are doors in this world that should never be opened, and there are reasons they stay locked. Her gaze flicks to Theo, still trembling on the floor, then back to Alara. For a heartbeat, something like sorrow flickers in her eyes. This magic isn't just forbidden, it changes those who touch it. Irrevocably, the book lies between them, its pages rustling, though no wind stirs. Alara's fingers twitch, The shadows at her feet coil tighter, and in the silence, one terrible truth hangs unspoken. It's already too late. The ministry's owls arrive at dawn, their black feathers dusted with frost, the wax seals on their scrolls stamped with the unmistakable emblem of the Department of Mysteries. By breakfast, the entire school knows something's wrong. Aurors don't visit Hogwarts without reason, and the three cloaked figures waiting in Dumbledore's office don't look like they're here for tea. Alara's fork clatters against her plate as Professor McGonagall beckons her forward, the headmaster's gaze heavy with something unreadable. The whispers follow her like a wake, dark magic. Azkaban, blood traitor, the lead Auror, a man with a face like weather-beaten stone, introduces himself as Rookwood. His voice is gravel wrapped in velvet, the kind of tone that's seen too much to be surprised by anything. Miss Blackthorn, he says, tapping a file on Dumbledore's desk. The parchment inside is singed at the edges, as if someone tried, and failed, to burn it. We've been watching your family for centuries, not because of what they've done, but because of what they are. He flips the file open, revealing a lineage chart so tangled with dark marks, it looks like a spider's web. At the very top, in ink blacker than the rest, sits a name that stops Elara's breath. Ecrisdes Blackthorn, architect of Askeban. Rookwood leans forward, his shadow stretching unnaturally long across the floor. The prophecy isn't just about the prison, he says. It's about the heir, the one who can control what's inside. His gloved hand slides a second parchment across the desk, this one brittle with age. The words are barely legible, but the meaning is clear. When the moon drowns, the heir shall wake the sleeper, and the walls will sing with forgotten voices. Alara's fingers twitch, the runes on her arms prickling as if in recognition. McGonagall's teacup shatters on the floor, the sound like a gunshot in the silent room. You can't possibly suggest, she begins, but Rookwood cuts her off with a raised hand. We're not here to accuse, we're here to offer a choice. His gaze locks onto Alara's, and for the first time, she sees something behind the steel, fear. Help us destroy the chamber before the moon drowns, or the ministry will have no choice but to brand you what your blood says you are. The weight of his words hangs in the air, thick as the prison fog that's been creeping into Alara's dreams. Part of her wants to recoil, to deny the power humming in her veins, the way the shadows cling to her like old friends. But another part, deeper and darker, thrills at the thought. What if the prophecy isn't a curse, but a key? What if the magic coiled inside her isn't something to fear, but something to wield? Rookwood sees the conflict in her eyes. He sighs, reaching into his cloak and pulling out a small, silver vial. Veritaserum, he says flatly. One drop, and you'll tell us everything, including where Theo hid the book. Elara's stomach plummets. Theo, they've got him too. Rookwood's next words are softer, almost pitying. Or you can walk out of here with us tonight, of your own free will, and end this before it starts. Outside the window, the first snow of winter begins to fall. Somewhere beyond the castle walls, the tide is turning, and the moon, pale and bloated, hangs low in the sky. The choice should be simple. It isn't, because as much as Alara fears what's awakening inside her, the chamber's voice whispers a truth she can't unhear. You were never meant to destroy it. You were meant to rule it. The dormitory air hums with an unnatural stillness, thick enough to choke on. Alara presses her palms to the cold window pane. watching her reflection flicker in the glass, except it's not quite her anymore. The runes coil up her neck now, their jagged lines pulsing in time, with the voice murmuring in her mind. They'll never let you be anything but his heir. It croons, slick as oil. Unless you claim it first. Her fingers twitch toward the quill on her desk. The note to Theo is brief, the ink smudged where her hands shook. I have to finish what I started. The cloak she pulls over her shoulders isn't just for warmth. It's a shroud, blotting out the girl she was before the chamber, before the book, before the truth slithered under her skin. Hogwarts corridors have never felt so vast, so hollow. Every portrait eyes her as she passes, their whispers trailing like smoke. Blackthorne, blood traitor. Heir. The castle itself seems to hold its breath as she descends the moving staircases, the stones beneath her feet vibrating with something deeper than magic. The boathouse reeks of damp wood and old secrets. The boat rocks as she steps in, its hull scraping against the dock like a warning. No oars, no sail. It doesn't matter. The moment her fingers brush the water, the tide pulls them forward, swift and sure as a compass needle, finding north. The storm overhead churns, the moon a smudge of drowned light behind the clouds. Azkaban's silhouette looms ahead, its towers bent like grasping fingers. The voice in her head purrs. You feel it, don't you, the way the prison knows you? She does. The closer they glide, the warmer the runes burn, their glow seeping through her cloak like lantern light. The Dementors don't swarm this time. They part, their ragged forms bowing low as her boat scrapes ashore, not out of respect, out of recognition. The door to the chamber stands open, its edges rimed with frost. The air inside doesn't just smell of salt and iron and amore, it smells of her, sage and lightning, and the sharp tang of pomegranate seeds, the scent of every memory the voice has been peeling back. The faces in the walls aren't screaming now, they are smiling. Alara takes the first step, then the next. The stones sigh beneath her boots, the whispers rising to a chorus. Somewhere deep below, something stirs, not the chamber, not the prison, the thing they were built to contain. And as the runes on her skin flare brighter, she realizes the truth. She's not here to face it. She's here to set it free. The stones recognize her before she touches them. The moment Alara's bare fingers brush Askeban's outer wall, the runes on her skin ignite, their glow bleeding into the cracks between the bricks like liquid fire. The prison doesn't just let her in. It sighs, its gates groaning open with a sound like a long-held breath, finally released. The Dementors don't lurk in the archway this time. They hover at a distance, their hollow faces tilted toward her, not in hunger, but in something eerily close to deference. The air thrums against her skin, charged with a current that isn't magic. Not exactly. It's older, hungrier. The voice in her head purrs. They remember what you are. The corridor to the chamber is shorter than before, the walls pressing close as if guiding her forward. The door stands ajar, frost glittering along its edges like 1,000 watching eyes. Inside, the chamber has changed. The faces in the walls aren't frozen in agony anymore. They are turned toward the center, their hollow mouths slack with awe. And there, suspended in the air where no mirror should be, hangs a slab of black glass, its surface swirling like smoke over water. Alara's reflection doesn't appear. Instead, the glass darkens, then clears to reveal a man in tattered robes, his fingers steepled under his chin. Acrides doesn't look like the monster from the books. His face is sharp but not cruel, his eyes the same storm gray as hers. When he smiles, it's with the quiet satisfaction of a chess player spotting a long-awaited move. "Took you long enough," he murmurs, though his lips don't move. The voice comes from everywhere, the walls, the floor, the blood roaring in Alara's ears. He gestures to the mirror, and the image shifts. Askeban sprawls below them, not as a prison, but as a living thing. Its towers pulsing like veins, its dungeons breathing like lungs. Dementors swirl around its spires like bees around a hive. "You felt it," Acrides says. "The pull, the power. They told you it was corruption, but they were wrong." The mirror shivers, showing flashes of ministry officials burning documents, historians scratching out names. Entire pages of history were written. They fear what they don't understand. But you could wield it. The offer hangs in the air, sweet as poisoned honey. No demands, no threats, just a simple truth. The prison was never meant to cage dark wizards. It was meant to create them. Acrides leans forward, his fingers pressing against the glass from the other side. "Say the word," he whispers, "and the walls will sing for you." Behind him, the faces in the mirror lean in too, their whispers rising to a chorus, not of pain, of promise. Alara's hand lifts without her consent, her fingertips hovering an inch from the glass. The runes on her arm blaze brighter, their light refracting in the mirror's surface like stars caught in a black sea. One touch, that's all it would take. The voice in her head goes silent, waiting. For the first time since the chamber called to her, the choice is hers alone. The mirror's surface shivers like disturbed water, and suddenly Alara isn't just looking at her reflection. She's inside it. The vision swallows her whole. Azkaban's towers stretch higher, their spires crowned with obsidian flames. The sky pulses a sickly green, and below, chained figures shuffle through the courtyard. Her breath catches as she recognizes Theo among them, his face gaunt, his eyes hollow. Not just him, McGonagall, Rookwood, even the first year, Hufflepuffs, who used to wave at her in the halls. All bound in magic-dampening cuffs, their mouths stitched shut with threads of shadow. At the center of it all, atop a throne of fused bones, sits her. Not the Alara who stumbled into the chamber, but something colder, sharper, her eyes black as the space between stars. The vision Alara lifts a hand, and the prison obeys, its stones groaning as they reshape themselves to her will. The Dementors kneel, the walls whisper her name, and the voice, Acrides' voice, coos from everywhere at once. "This is what you were made for." Reality snaps back like a rubber band, the chamber's cold air rushing into Alara's lungs. The mirror cracks down the middle, the image fracturing but not fading. The voice turns sharp, impatient. "Choose," it demands. "Claim your birthright, or spend eternity as another wailing face in the walls." The threat hangs in the air, thick as the iron scent of old blood. Alara's fingers tighten around her wand. For a heartbeat, she hesitates. The power thrums in her veins, sweet and heady as fire whiskey. She could rule. She could remake everything. But then she sees Theo's face again, not the broken prisoner from the vision, but the boy who smuggled her sweets after curfew, who laughed so hard he snorted pumpkin juice through his nose. the boy who stood between her and the darkness, even when it cost him everything. The runes on her arms blaze white hot, searing her skin with their answer before she even speaks. The voice shrieks as she raises her wand, not to the mirror, but to the chamber's heart, the pulsing, weeping stone where the prison's true power festers. The spell tears from her throat raw and unbidden, a torrent of silver fire that doesn't just burn, it unmakes. The faces in the walls wail as the fissures spread, their trapped souls finally, mercifully, crumbling to ash. Acrisdes' roar shakes the foundations, the mirror exploding into shards that hover midair, each fragment reflecting a different horror, Askeban's birth, its centuries of suffering, the future that will never be. You fool, the voice howls. You could have been a queen. Alara doesn't flinch. She steps forward, crushing a shard under her boot. I'd rather be human, she whispers, and plunges her wand into the Heartstone. The explosion of light doesn't just blind her. It erases her, the chamber, the very memory of the magic that built it. For one endless moment, there's nothing. Then, like the first breath after drowning, the world rushes back. The walls are just walls. The air is just air, and the voice, gone, silence, thick and heavy, settles over the ruins. Somewhere far above, the real moon breaks through the storm clouds, its light spilling through the shattered ceiling like a benediction. The runes on Alara's arms fade to scars. The prison doesn't shudder or groan. It simply exhales, and for the first time in centuries, Azkaban sleeps. The moment Alara's wand pierces the Heartstone, the world fractures. The chamber doesn't just collapse. It unravels, stone grinding against stone, in a chorus of final, desperate screams. The mirror shatters into 1,000 silver teeth, each fragment reflecting a different horror. Acrisdes' face contorted in rage, the prisoners in the walls dissolving into smoke, her own eyes flickering between black and their natural gray as the curse fights to keep its hold. The runes on her arms blaze white hot, searing away like paper in a furnace, but the pain is nothing compared to the voice howling in her skull. You wretched girl, you've ruined everything. Theo's shout cuts through the chaos, his voice raw with terror as he stumbles into the chamber, his robes torn and his face streaked with soot. He must have fought through the collapsing corridors, past the panicking Dementors and the ministry wizards swarming the upper levels. His hand closes around Alara's wrist, yanking her backward just as the ceiling above the Heartstone splits open, a waterfall of black sand pouring through the gap like an hourglass, counting down the prison's final seconds. Move, he gasps, dragging her toward the trembling corridor. Behind them, the walls fold inward like a great beast, curling around a wound, the faces in the stone weeping tears of dust as they crumble to nothing. Azkaban doesn't let them go easily. The corridor twists, the floor buckling underfoot as if the prison itself is trying to swallow them whole. Theo's Lumos spell gutters out, leaving them to navigate by the eerie glow of the cracks, spider, webbing through the wall's fissures that pulse with a fading, sickly light. The air tastes like burnt metal and sea salt, thick with the echoes of spells cast centuries ago. Alara's knees nearly give out when they reach the courtyard, the sky above them no longer choked with storm clouds, but streaked with the first pale fingers of dawn. Theo doesn't stop running until the boat scrapes against the shore, his hands shaking as he all but throws Alara into it. Behind them, Azkaban's towers sway like drunkards, their foundations groaning as the dark magic that sustained them for centuries finally bleeds away. The Dementors don't flee, they simply dissolve, their tattered robes floating to the ground like shed snakeskins as the curse that bound them snaps. Theo collapses beside her in the boat, his breath coming in ragged gulps. "You absolute idiot," he wheezes, but there's no anger left in it, just relief so profound it borders on delirium. Alara can't speak. Her throat is raw, her arms throbbing where the runes once coiled. But as the prison shrinks behind them, something impossible happens. The first bird she's heard in weeks trills from a nearby rock, its song piercing the stillness. The sea, usually black as ink, shimmers with actual sunlight. Askeban still stands, but for the first time in its cursed history, it's just stone, just walls. The weight that lifted when the Heartstone shattered wasn't just the dark magic. It was the prison's very soul, finally allowed to rest. Theo's hand finds hers, his grip tight enough to bruise. Neither of them mentions the way the water around the island seems clearer, or how the wind carries the scent of rain instead of rot. Some changes are too fragile to name aloud. Back on shore, the ministry wizards swarm like ants, their shouts muffled by the distance. Theo tenses, but Alara shakes her head. Let them come, let them see. The truth is written in the way the morning light touches the prison's towers without flinching, in the way her scars no longer burn when she looks at them. The greatest magic wasn't in destroying the darkness, it was in proving it could be outlived. The boat drifts untethered toward the horizon. Somewhere behind them, deep in the ruins of the chamber, the last shard of the mirror glints once, then turns to dust. The great hall buzzes with a kind of energy Alara hasn't felt in months, laughter bouncing off the enchanted ceiling, students clustering around the house tables like nothing's changed. But the moment she steps inside, the chatter stutters. Then, like a wave, the applause starts. Gryffindors pound their goblets on the table. Hufflepuffs rise to their feet. Even the Slytherins offer grudging nods. Someone shouts, "Blackthorne the Breaker," and the nickname sticks like syrup, thick and cloying. Alara forces a smile, her fingers tracing the faint scars on her wrists where the runes once burned. Theo slides into the seat beside her, their shoulders brushing. A small thing, but it settles her. His voice is low, just for her ears. "You don't have to pretend with me." The words are a lifeline, because while the papers call her a hero, the nightmares tell a different story. Every time she closes her eyes, she's back in the chamber, the mirror shattering over and over, Acristes's voice hissing like steam in her skull. McGonagall's hand on her shoulder startles her. The headmistress doesn't offer praise, just a steaming cup of tea and a look that says more than words ever could. The ministry has sealed the chamber, she murmurs. Officially, it never existed. Alara nods, but the weight in her chest doesn't lift. Sealing a door doesn't erase what's behind it. Later, in the quiet of the Gryffindor common room, Theo breaks the silence. Do you ever wonder? He doesn't finish. He doesn't need to. Alara watches the firelight dance over her hands, half expecting the shadows to twitch like they used to. The curse is gone. The prison is just stone, but magic like that leaves stains, and some stains don't wash out. Theo tosses her a chocolate frog, the gesture so normal it aches. "Whatever's left," he says, "we'll handle it together." Alara unwraps the candy, the sweetness sharp on her tongue. She doesn't tell him about the dreams the way Azkaban's whispers sometimes slither back, when the castle's too quiet. Some secrets are too heavy to share. Outside the window, the black lake glitters under the moon. Somewhere beyond it, Askeban's silhouette stands empty, its darkness scattered. But as Alara presses her palm to the cold glass, she swears she feels the faintest echo of a heartbeat. Not the prison's, hers, and that might be the most terrifying thing of all. Rookwood's office smells of burnt parchment and old regret. The aura leans across his desk, the offer sliding toward Alara like a chess piece she's expected to take. A position in the ministry, he says, voice gravel dry. Special division. You'd be the first to study the prison's remnants and sure nothing like this happens again. The parchment glows faintly, the ink shimmering with enchantments, meant to bind as much as protect. For a heartbeat, the old hunger stirs in Alara's chest, the one that whispered of power, of legacy, of blood calling to blood. She pushes the parchment back, her scars tingling where the runes once burned. I've seen what happens when people try to control dark magic instead of understanding it. The words taste like salt and iron, the same as the chamber's breath. Rookwood's jaw tightens, but it's not anger in his eyes. It's fear, the kind that comes from realizing the monster under the bed wasn't just real, it was yours. The wind rattles the window as she turns to leave, carrying the scent of the sea. Or maybe it's the prison, even now refusing to fade. Rookwood's voice chases her to the door. You think you can walk away? That thing's in your blood, Blackthorne. It'll come knocking someday. Alara doesn't flinch. Let it. The corridor outside is too bright, the ministry's white walls glaring after the dimness of Rookwood's office. Theo waits by the lifts, tossing a chocolate frog from hand to hand like a talisman. He doesn't ask. He just nods toward the exit, where sunlight spills through the atrium's enchanted ceiling. But as they step into the open air, the wind curls around Alara's wrist cold, familiar. A whisper slithers through the rustling leaves, so soft she almost misses it. Air, not a threat, a reminder. Some doors stay open, even when you nail them shut. Theo glances back, but Alara's already walking, her fingers brushing her wand. Let the ministry guard their secrets. She'll be studying the shadows they refuse to name. Somewhere, deep beneath the waves, Azkaban's stones sigh, and for the first time, Alara smiles. The morning sun paints the Hogwarts grounds in gold, but Alara's gaze lingers on the horizon, where Azkaban's jagged silhouette cuts through the mist like a scar. The wind carries the faintest tang of salt, or perhaps it's just memory playing tricks. She flexes her fingers, the scars on her wrists pale now, barely visible unless you know where to look. But she feels them, always, like the whisper of a locked door at the back of her mind, a reminder of what she walked away from, and what walked away with her. Theo's elbow bumps hers, his warmth a grounding force. He doesn't offer empty reassurances or ask if she's okay. He just stands there, shoulder to shoulder, his silence louder than any speech. The grass rustles around their ankles, alive with the kind of magic that doesn't need incantations, just roots digging deep, stubborn as hope. Azkaban's shadow may stretch long, but here, now, the light fights back. The sun breaks through the clouds, spilling across the black lake, turning the water into molten silver. For a heartbeat, the prison's outline wavers, as if the sea itself is trying to swallow it whole. Alara exhales, the weight in her chest shifting, not gone but lighter. The burden isn't hers alone to carry. Theo's scars match hers, his nightmares just as real. And somewhere in the Ministry's archives, Rookwood's warning gathers dust beside reports that will never see daylight. The future isn't some unbroken road stretching toward the horizon. It's 1,000 branching paths, some dark, some bright, all waiting. Alara turns her back on the sea, on the prison, on the ghost of a voice that still murmurs in her dreams. The castle looms ahead, its towers glowing in the dawn, and for the first time, it doesn't feel like a sanctuary. It feels like a starting line. Theo grins, tossing an apple between his hands. Breakfast, he asks, as if they're just two students late for the Great Hall, as if the world hasn't cracked open and remade itself around them. Alara matches his step, her shadow stretching long behind her. Not a stain, not a chain, just proof she's still here. Still standing. Some stories end with locked doors and buried secrets. This one ends with footsteps on dew-damp grass, with the distant cry of a phoenix soaring overhead, with the simple, defiant act of turning toward the light. The sun climbs higher, the shadows shrink, and Askeban becomes just a shape on the water, fading with every step they take.